Hey guys, Huzzy bringing you another video. Now, welcome to something not different, but obviously it's not a live gameplay video for the first video of the day, and that is because, and I mentioned it in last night's video, Riot's been a bit all over the place with when the season is starting. A week ago, I was told on the 10th of January at 5 AM, EU West will be live, go play ranked. I was always a little bit like, why is ranked starting on a Tuesday? That's the day before a patch. And turns out, literally upon yesterday, I was then told, oh, no, it's going to start on the Wednesday. But that really sucks for me because obviously I want the placement game #1 to be the first video on the day the season comes out. So I've not prepped any content ahead of time. So that's what I'm doing here. What I'm doing in this video is Riot yesterday released 3 dev chat videos, state of the game, player behavior, and another one. We're gonna, in this video, watch all 3 of those and live react to them. And then today's second video will be the patch notes that start the rank season. So let's get into it. I've got Twitch chat with me. I'm sure they might react to here or there about it as well. I've not watched these, so this is my live reaction. Here we go. So all I'll say, state of the game going into it. I think the game isn't terrible right now, but it could be better. I think healing is still very much broken. I think tanks are doing way too much damage and are weirdly getting too tanky to a certain degree. Mages, a class that I love, aren't that good at the moment. So yeah, like, I would like the state of the game to be a bit different than it is. All I will say, and I do know this, I have been told, these were recorded last year. So before Riot went on break, so we're talking early December, that is when these were recorded. So with weeks more of preseason, things potentially could have changed. Let's see if anything is, though. All right.
Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Froxon-Long.
Been in a meeting with him.
Design lead of the Summoners Rift team. And I'm Patrick Petrie-Noonan. I'm the product lead of the Summoners Rift team. And the Summoners Rift team, we own game health and game balance and all of the major game system updates in League of Legends. So this will be things like the champion durability update and preseason that we do each year. And today we wanted to talk to you a bit about just some of our thoughts on state of the game and balance and things that we spend a lot of time thinking about and working on. I know an interesting one is thinking about position health, and when I say position, I mean like top, jungle, mid, ADC, and support, of course. We look at select rates, like how many people are playing it, what do people feel and think when they're playing that, but we also think a lot about something called position agency too. Yeah, so for position agency, unlike champion win rates, we can't really look at the win rates of a position because there's one in each team. And so instead we look at something called position agency, which is the impact of
quiet?
Position on the game's outcome. So for example, if a jungler were to gank mid and get a successful kill, that's likely going to be some amount of impact towards the game outcome. And so we use a combination of some data models to figure out position agency, as well as our intuitive understanding as game designers and as players of the game to see whether a position is powerful or not.
So one thing I will say, and this is something that we just do know, obviously these two have been here, well, I don't actually know how long the one on the right has been there, but these two have said, I think on Reddit and Twitter and stuff, people have found them kind of saying that they use data a lot, and this is something that I've been saying for years, and it's something that I was saying before they even came out officially and said that's what they do, is the current balance of League, they mainly just look at data. They mainly just look at literally numbers. And to me, I know there's some people would be fine with that, but to me, there is a difference between numbers that are happening in game and just the feel of the game. It's very different. I've always given the example as this current state balance team would not do what is needed in certain requirements. For example, I always give it Azir. Azir a few years ago was the most OP champion in the game to a certain level, in high rating play, but his overall win rate was 44%, one of the worst win rates there's ever been for a champion that's been out for a while. So to a data person, they go, oh, that champion's weak, we need to buff it. Well, to the actual league player base, he was insanely overpowered. It's where overall win rate doesn't always tell the story. Champions have, nuance and difficulty to them that maybe some players can't do, but others can absolutely master and just win the game basically for free. But this current dev team, in theory, wouldn't really have nerfed that Azir, because they'd look at that data and go, he doesn't fit in the need to get nerfed, even though he definitely did. That's my only major criticism with this dev team. I don't know, obviously, if I don't obviously know what their personal biases are, like if they are tank players or they're assassin players. We don't know, but there are certain classes that I think have been hurt a little bit more over the last couple of years with this balanced team than others. I think assassins have been very well liked by this dev team, more than any other class, I would say. So much so that assassins now are kind of tanky and still one-shot you. It's kind of weird how that works, but yeah, I'd say they are very favoring assassins for the last couple of years. But yeah.
When you look at like how position agency is going across all the roles in the game right now, is there anything you're seeing that stands out as needing a bit more attention?
Throughout the year, we did, changes like durability update,
which didn't do a lot.
The objective changes in patch 12.14, the teleport changes in patch 12.1, and these changes all tended to have one role getting the bad end of the deal, which was top lane. Both top laners were less likely to be able to kill squishy champions playing in the mid or support or AD carry positions, as well as finding it harder to impact dragon fights, which had become a little more impactful overall to the game outcome. And so what we observed was top lane going down in agency, and so we tried to give some of that back in preseason. That's not to say our job there is done. We do think that there are some gaps with the way that top laners find satisfaction in playing the role, and we observe that there's just a general split of players in the top lane overall. There are some top laners that really want to fight 1v1, and there are some top laners that really want to impact the map, and we want to make sure that a lot of those playstyles are viable as well.
And I know in working on preseason, another one of the big things we were looking at is how we could...
Oh, that's all there's so much top. So yeah, top lane, I would say... Top lane's a weird lane at the moment, because like they did mention it, but very briefly, they haven't really just further discussed. Top lane, historically, usually has kind of one meta-ish top lane, and that's kind of what you play. Top lane actually has kind of two metas going on at the exact same time. Like they said, you've got the 1v1 duelists, or you have the more team-orientated grouping top laners. And it's fine normally if one of those things is happening. If the meta in top lane is 1v1 duelist, then it's a 1v1 duelist versus a 1v1 duelist. They fight each other 1v1, and that's kind of fine. Or if it's both top laners are more team-based top laners, there's not really that 1v1 duel happening. They both go and help the team fight, and then it's a 5v5 team fight kind of thing. The problem that you have in top lane at the moment is there's both of those metas running at the exact same time. So you always feel, especially if you're having one team has got the team-orientated top laner and one team's got the duelist, it always feels a bit weird because that duelist most of the time is never going to want to leave top lane, and they're just going to split push the whole time. And then you have the team orientated that wants to actively leave that lane. It's a bit of a weird dynamic because one top laner is probably going to make a much bigger impact than the other, not because just of top lane. It's a bit peculiar because it's got two metas happening at the exact same time. But yeah.
Improve jungle select. So as probably a lot of players realize, like if we don't have the right amount of people playing all the different roles, this leads to other things like increase in autofill, like less quality matchmaking. And so even though jungle's a very powerful
hey,
role,
TTS Gaming, thank you much for the 2 gifted subs.
Wanting to play it. So I do know that we've created some changes for
first gifted subs of 2023.
Encourage some players to try out the jungle for the first time, maybe shift back over, making it a little bit more approachable. In this latest preseason 2, we'd worked on a bunch of the new tank items together, and kind of our approach to tank items in the latest preseason did represent some shift in philosophy around it.
Wait.
Our approach to tank items in the latest preseason did
that sounds scripting.
Tank items together. And kind of our approach to tank items in the latest preseason did
Why did what? But I vaguely knew this was happening because my Twitch chat said something happens around 3:24. Why did they show a scripting Scion in the state of the game? Oh, doesn't that sum up a bit of the state of the game? Is when you're actively showing a scripter do it? What? that is funny. They actually, because for those that don't get it or you're newer to League, so Scion's ultimate is a kind of just very slow. He goes in a direction. You can slowly bank your turning. He can't turn on a pendulum or turn on a dime instantly. But if you run scripts on Scion, you can. He can, like, it kind of messes it up a little bit and he can just make right angle turns in his ultimate. You cannot do that in any other way. So the fact that...
And kind of our approach to tank items in the latest preseason.
So right now, the only thing he could do is continue this direction and slowly bank left. He might hit the Jace, but you'd slowly bank left. Look at that. It's like he... it would be doing a slow curve, not an instant, like, 45 degree. And even because someone in chat is saying it might be a bug. It might be a bug, not a script. But why would you show that specific clip in the state of the game? No idea. I will just say, and I've said it, quite a few times, hey, Average Tea Drinker, I do not get the fascination that Riot has with Scion. Like, I have played this champion, I would say, over 5 times in preseason, and I have felt like an absolute god on that champion. Like, he's ridiculously strong. The problem with Scion, and I hate to say it, is the average player that plays Scion is terrible. The average player on Scion goes over 10 deaths and is the reason that their team loses. If you're okay at Scion and you play him reasonably well, he's insanely strong, and they keep buffing him. And again, that is the problem with Riot, that just going off data, is because if you actually know the feel of the champion and you play the champion, he's pretty strong. If you just go off data and his win rate is getting completely tanked by people running full AD on him, it's the problem with them just going off data. It's stupid, but that's what they do.
Did like represent some shift in philosophy around kind of how we look at the Mythic item system.
Yeah, so when we first started with the Mythic item system, we were generally looking at a few specific goals. We wanted players to always be able to choose between several different Mythic items. We always wanted Mythic items to be present in your build, and so they were generally tuned to be a strong early purchase. But as we've kind of seen it play out over the years, it's had a few negative effects. Namely, there are some champions who don't feel like they have a great Mythic item, and so being forced to buy a Mythic that doesn't feel right for their champion can feel pretty bad. And also we've seen players wanting to opt into specific legendary items like Blade of the Ruined King that do feel great for their champion.
Yeah.
And
Blade is just as strong as a Mythic,
swing at
though.
the tank Mythics in preseason kind of reflects a change in our philosophy, where we're not trying to pigeonhole champions into buying a specific Mythic item every game.
They're going to get rid of Mythics, I'm calling it.
Are designed so that there are some Mythics that you can purchase first, and there are some Mythics that you can purchase second, and the whole system overall is just a lot more flexible. But we still wanted Mythic items to present this kind of high fantasy, high...
I'm calling it right now. Potentially next year, Mythics are probably gone. The fact that they're completely okay with legendaries being bought first when their whole philosophy of Mythics originally was, oh, you have to buy them first. To me, that is already a shift of Mythics are probably going to get phased out. That is probably my guess.
Build power over the game with the Mythic passive, and we think that, this will strike kind of a good balance between early purchases of Mythic items and later build defining.
And here's the thing that I would say, if Riot actively wanted people to buy a Mythic item first, there's one thing that they could have done really easily, but they never did. Obviously, by having a Mythic item, it buffs all other legendary, you get stats at every other legendary item you have. Like, let's just give a random example. If you buy one of the ability power Mythics, you might get some ability haste per legendary item complete. The way that they could have actually made it like you had to buy a Mythic first is make it so after purchase of the mythic item, only legendaries after the purchase of a mythic item, then you get the ability haste. So if you go a legendary first, then the mythic, you will not get the ability haste for the first legendary item. That would make them have to build, in essence, the mythic first, because you're actively losing out on stats if you don't buy it first, kind of thing.
Purchases for them.
And I know we're still always looking at the different classes and champions in the game. While we are a bit looser on, like, you know, you always have to choose between multiple mythic items, because if there's an item a champion loves, like, that's fine. We want them to be able to take it. But we are still looking for cases where maybe a champion does want more choice in the item system and they don't have that. Or maybe there's just a certain type of item that their champion would really benefit by and it's not even available as an option. So there might be new items coming out over the next year, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps.
But yeah,
we
when
need
thinking
more
about kind of the state of the game and balance in the game, I know probably one of the hottest topics for players is champion balance. Like, that's kind of the main vehicle that players experience the game. How strong is my champion? How strong is the enemy champion? It was really exciting to see the champion durability update go out, and we saw it live. The fights are lasting longer. Players have more opportunity for strategic decisions. It was exciting to see that this doesn't seem to have impacted bloodiness or amount of fighting or kills. That was something we were worried about. And then we've also had a chance now to see this play out at the highest levels of play and professional.
It's definitely
play
better than it
Worlds.
was, but it is slowly getting back to what it was before.
We're very nervous about increasing the durability of every champion in the game and how that would impact bloodiness. However, we've kind of observed that
it's better.
There were some surprising outcomes from the objective changes in particular.
Like, again, just to say, I remember, because obviously I was in a dev meeting with Riot. Some of you may remember there was a controversial thing that blew up in Reddit from the video I made. But I was literally in the dev meeting, and you could tell the devs were they did not want to do the durability update. 100%, they did not want to do it. They thought it was a bad thing to do, yet it's overall been an absolute positive. Team fights that last longer are more strategic and require more skill. Where before, it was just like, bam, everybody's dead in a moment. There's no skill to that. So it's actually added skill back into the game. That was always the thing that I was arguing, is their complete one-shot meta that they had the year before last. It was no skill. It was hardly any skill in that type of play, and that shows. There was none. So it is better. The only, I would say, a big population of player that is not that happy about the durability update, even though you can still do it, is the absolute assassin players, because they absolutely live and die for complete one-shots. But you can still do that, you just have to build as an assassin. What was happening before, they could build as bruisers and still one-shot people. Well, now they do actually have to build as an assassin if they want to one-shot somebody. So, yeah.
We intended to make objectives a little more tanky, so there was more tension around fights, and to make them more rewarding to take in compensation for that. And what we've observed is that, especially in pro play, engagements around these objectives have been very high tension. A team can't just burst the dragon and then run away.
Yeah,
which is good.
They have to, kind of think carefully about how they're committing their resources. Maybe there's a bit of back and
more
forth.
strategic, but it takes longer.
For a lot more of this back and forth between teams and high tension engagements, which has been really exciting to watch overall on the pro play stage.
Yeah, it's been exciting watching that at Worlds, but now that we're kind of focusing back in on live play and the rest of the player base and what champion balance is like, we do still think there's opportunities to improve our current approach to champion balance.
Yeah, for sure. So
not just data.
Champion balance framework that we did a few years ago, it served us pretty well. The game feels like it's in a pretty good spot numerically balanced wise. But moving forward, I think there's a lot of opportunity in making sure that champions feel good to play.
Feel!
That they're satisfying.
They use the word feel. They're not robots. They're not robots. Oh my god. Oh, this is all that I've been talking about for years. That all right was going on, and they literally mentioned here, they've numerically are balanced. That's different to feel. Feel is when you actually are playing the game, and that's one of my biggest criticisms, is the current balanced dev team. It does not feel like they actually play the game. Oh my god. Hey, bubbly butt Bob.
Their gameplay fantasy that the player signs up for when they lock in their champion. And so even though a champion might be numerically balanced, it doesn't mean that they necessarily feel the most satisfying
Oh
that
my
they can be to
God.
play. And
They
so
said
we
it.
want to have a kind of heightened focus on that moving through this year, as well as kind of making sure that all champions fit a strategic purpose in the game alongside
That's one of the best things I've ever heard them
There are a
say.
few other deficiencies.
He literally said even if numerically something's balanced, it may not feel balanced. That is what I've been waiting for them to say for at least the last 2 years. Numerically, something isn't overpowered, but it could be. It's the same thing, like I said with Izir earlier. Or numerically, oh, it's fine, but it could be quite weak. It's the feel of the game. That's the actual driving force of any game that there should be. It's the feel of the game, not just a robot number crunching data.
Champion balance framework that we've observed. So a champion might be quote unquote balanced, but they might be on the weak side of balanced or the strong side of balanced for an extended period of time, but it doesn't result in them being changed. And so we're kind of making sure that champions, especially when they've been in a certain state for a long time, either too weak or too strong, but not quite strong or not quite weak enough to receive a direct change, that those champions will be looked at. And so we think that there are many other small changes like this that we kind of need to investigate and see if they're going to be good to put into practice.
Great.
Well, yeah,
So,
some people in Twitch chat are saying already, is like, oh, but they're not nerfing Maud. Obviously, this is going to take a while. Remember, just worth knowing, they recorded these videos, I think, in like early December. I'm not even kidding. So a lot has changed since. A lot of champions obviously have gained strength where they wouldn't have known it at the time. But it's champions like, hell, it sounds stupid, but like Yone has quite a lot of strength, but numerically probably isn't in a state of needing to get nerfed. It's champs like that hopefully they're now going to focus on a little bit. It's the exact same thing with me. Sion does not need a buff. If anything, needs a nerf, but they're buffing him. Stuff like that just doesn't make sense. To me, that is a screaming thing that nobody on the balance or test team plays Sion. Because he's strong. He really is.
Speaking of a good state of the game and the start of the new ranked season, any recommendations for the players out there to start their
win your games?
So I think the jungle is going to be a vibrant place for champions of all types to at least go in initially. We think the jungle pets are going to be meaningfully improving champions' jungle clears and their ability to perform in the jungle. Some other stuff with the tank items I think is going to be super exciting, and yeah, we're super excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I'm excited to hopefully take my Singed back into the jungle. We'll see how that works out. But anyways, yeah, it's been a pleasure talking about just our thoughts on the state of the game, and we just want to wish all the players out there best of luck on their start of the ranked season, and happy climbing.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay. Splash, thank you so much for the 24 months of Prime, and Bubbly Butt Bob 30 months of Prime. Thank you both so much, massively. So my TLDR on that is they didn't say a whole lot. Like, really, if you actually kind of were listening to what they were saying, they weren't saying a whole lot. They're not saying like this is specifically what we're doing. What they have said is overall they are fairly happy with the game, but there are some much needed areas that could do with some change. I would have liked them to talk about healing. Again, when I talk about this topic, just to be very clear, I'm not talking about Soraka healing somebody. I'm talking about Aatrox and champions like that have obscene levels of healing. That is to the point that there's not much skill going on. That is my biggest driving factor. If a element of the game is overriding skill, that shouldn't be. Skill should be the first and foremost thing for League of Legends. And when damage is too high, it takes away from skill. If self-healing is too high, it takes away from skill. Those are the biggest things that I don't like. So it would have been nice if they mentioned that specifically, but obviously they didn't. But overall, it's interesting. The biggest takeaway that I can have from that is that, you probably saw how I reacted. Them saying that they are going to look into use cases that numerically something might not be in a state to get buffed or nerfed, but they're going to look at actually how it feels more. That is literally what I have been shouting about for over 2 years. So that is a nice thing to hear, as that makes quite a big difference. All right, next up, I do realize we went quite long on that one video, so we'll probably not pause the next 2 videos as much. So let's do player behavior, and then we'll do its mid-scope updates third. But yeah, we won't pause it much this one. We'll just react as we go.
I'm West Hart, head of player dynamics here at Riot.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm the head of the behavioral systems team on League of Legends.
There's so many new people, by the way.
And to talk about player behavior.
This topic is never easy to talk about. Unfortunately, we've seen over the last several years
Sound low again?
there's been really negative trends in how our players are feeling about player behavior. There's definitely a lot more work to do, and I will say that again and again.
Just to speak a little bit for like the greater we, because we have your team. It's doing amazing work. We have central player dynamics.
His hair is great.
Working on the game agnostic systems, and there's a good partnership there. There's social and player dynamics over on Valorant. So we've got all these folks that are working together and thinking in this space. What has your team been working on? What has made maybe the biggest impact as far as we can tell so far?
One of the big things that we released is an auto-mute
which is
feature,
good.
which automatically mutes players using inappropriate language in-game when it happens. And so that message will not be sent and players will be notified that those players
Again,
have been
it's not
muted. And
perfect.
we saw really
That's the
positive
problem.
player feedback from that, which was super exciting. We know that verbal abuse leads to this spiral of negativity that causes even more disruption in game. So we've partnered with your team who own a really robust verbal abuse detection software. And that has just leveled up our ability to make these places safer.
One thing that we knew from research was that the quicker you take action on a behavior, like a problem behavior, the more effective it's going to be. So this is more visible, but have there been other things that maybe just kind of flew under the radar that didn't get noticed because it wasn't so visible?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've seen our players talk about a lot is intentional feeding. And that is one of the most frustrating behaviors that we see in game.
But one of the challenges
It had to be
with
Nunu.
intentional feeding is the whole intentional part.
Absolutely.
Like, how do you detect intent? And we know from all kinds of social science that in lieu of knowing someone's intent, we assume it. And so, that's tough. That isn't to say, by the way, the players are wrong.
Yeah.
Right? They may be seeing it, but if we're going to automatically detect it, we have to have a certain level of confidence that it's actually happening.
We built a whole new model over the last year, making our intentional feeding detection a lot more robust. We've been able to increase the amount.
I'm going to be honest. I know it's not as easy as just saying what I'm about to say, but like quite an easy way to detect if someone's inting, in my opinion, is you take a time frame of deaths per action. So what I mean by that is if someone is 0-10, let's give the example. You're playing Sion and it's or a Yasuo or something that is quite known just to go 0-10, but their actions aren't nothing. That they are dealing damage, they are doing actively actions, but they are just dying a lot. Their intent is probably not bad. They're either just playing bad or they're intending to die, but not in a bad way. Is like a Scion, which quite a famous strategy, will intentionally die just to get that extra bit of tower plating or just to get those couple more minion waves. They'll do that for their investment in late game. That is the action that they're investing into that death. So it's a trade-off. Actual intentional feeding is if, let's say, a Nunu runs down mid lane and doesn't deal any damage, doesn't creep farm, doesn't do any tower damage, doesn't take a tower plate, and just simply dies to the enemy champion or dies to the enemy tower, surely it's fairly easy to detect going, okay, that death per action, he just died without actually doing anything. And hell, he did that 5 times within a 5-minute window. Bam, that's intentionally feeding. Where if that same example, that 5-minute window, okay, that Sion died 4 times in that 5-minute window, but he gained 80 farm, he gained 3 tower plates. It's very different. That, to me, is probably the easier way to detect it. And Average Tea Drinker just literally said what I'm about to get onto. To me, it shouldn't be that hard to detect actual intentional feeding. It's soft inting. And this is actually a topic that I've had discussions with Riot about, that it's a whole, not new, but it's the term soft inting or soft feeding is a newer term that is going to be very hard for them to detect. What that is it happens, especially in higher ratings, but it happens everywhere, is for some reason a player wants to lose the game, and that could be because they're just in a bad mood, or they got annoyed by one of their teammates, or in high rating, they know one of their teammates and they don't want that teammate to win, for example. So what they do is they disguise what they're doing as play, but they are actually inting. So they'll run into mid lane. Let's say they're jungling. They run into mid lane. They go for a gank and accidentally kind of go into tower range. They do it on purpose, but they make it look accidental. And oh, snap, sorry, I gave the enemy mid laner double buffs. They are doing it intentionally, but they're disguising it as actual play. So that whole that I was like, actions per death, they would be doing damage, they would be doing farming, but they just are dying a lot. That's a lot harder to detect as actual feeding, because it's, you know, like in the Sion example, he's not intentionally doing it badly, he's intending to win, but it's in that vein. That's a lot harder to detect, and that is probably near and impossible for a AI to detect, to be honest.
Amount of detections by over 200%, and have specific thresholds and levels for different MMRs, basing it on skill, because we can identify
That's good.
how different players play our games.
Yeah. Inting in bronze is different than inting in master, for example.
So visible to our players, but have made
Hey, Dio.
impact, are things like champion select reporting. So when players are in champion select and they come across disruptive behavior,
Don't play volley best support, apparently.
Reports and really make that experience better.
I suppose it inspires a thought then. So, of course, behavior doesn't happen in isolation. But it's important to recognize that, because we might be addressing the wrong problem, right? We might be seeing a symptom. For instance, like intentional feeding, no excuses, right? But sometimes they might just be an outcome of other things that have happened.
Absolutely.
Right?
This is a good thing to actually hear, because what everybody, hey Dingersdown Doodle, what everybody has actually said about Riot for the last couple of years when it comes to player behavior is they're not fixing the problem, they're just band-aiding a solution of, you know, auto muting somebody in chat. It stops them talking in that game, but then the next game they're just probably going to do it again and be toxic. It doesn't really get rid of that problem. So maybe they're going to look into that. Who knows?
Right. We've seen that with, it can happen if you don't get to play the role that you want, or even have a bad day. It might not even have anything to do with the game, but what happens in life happens in games, so you bring it in.
What we're finding is it's actually 95% of our players are only occasionally disruptive. They contribute to over 80% of the reports in our games, which means the vast majority of disruptive behaviors are done by all of us.
So again, just to make it very clear what they're actually saying about there. Hey, Mr. M, appreciate it massively. I'll read that soon. So they are saying 95% of the player base are 80% of the reports that happen. Basically, the 5% left over are the most toxic players that you can be. And that 5% of that players are 20% of the total reports. They should probably focus on that a little bit, because 5% of the league player base is still a very large portion. And for 5% of the player base to be 20% of the overall reports, it does show that that player base is also a major problem. And then when they talk about, oh, you know, 95% of the player base is 80% of the reports, this is the kind of dumb reporting that people, you know, if someone just has a bad game, they'll report somebody for feeding when they haven't had a bad game. It's dud data. It doesn't mean anything. So, yeah.
You and me, we get tilted in games.
Indeed we do.
And we exhibit these behaviors too. So we found
Not
that it's
really,
not just
but
about that one approach of punishing all those really disruptive players.
It would help.
It's about that holistic approach where we can identify, yes, there are some players who we do want to remove out of our ecosystem, but the large majority of us are actually really positive, and we want to be able to build features where we can celebrate that.
Quite often when we talk about like the player dynamics space, we're describing it as we want to make it safe to be social and more rewarding online for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the really great things that we've done over the last year to target that population is really building on our honor system. So we increased the rewards significantly with a new skin that is phenomenal. I hope you all have it.
No
I've not
bias
used it yet.
whatsoever.
No bias. Honor Recall VFX as well, where our
That was
players
cool.
can really showcase their honor in game, even if they don't necessarily play with that champion, play with that skin.
We make games. We're not trying to police.
Polybuggers said, how would they know if they don't play the game? That's the funny thing. I would imagine these type of devs play the game more than the balance team. Like when I say, oh, they don't play the game, I'm actually mainly talking about the balance team. I think they are so fixated on data that they feel they don't need to play the game. The behavior team, the art team, I actually think those dev teams are more likely to actually be playing the game.
Space. Like we want these to be great game experiences. So we're figuring out what our role is. Like when I look back on League, it's not what like we made that I remember. It's those great esports moments, right? Or it's the teams that were playing and the audiences. They got so excited about this. That's we can really come together and do something. Those kinds of moments, just cosplayers, like the creativity, how they bring the world that we put into our games to life. It's incredible. And so
True.
when we think about community's involvement, like, yes, we know we're going to need to deal with the negative stuff. Reducing bad does not create more good, any more than reducing sodium in your diet doesn't make our food more nutritious. So we got to do both, because otherwise we're kind of aiming for neutral. And that's not why any of us come to games. I mean, anybody who's played League to any extent knows that there's a high mastery curve, right? And you're never done. But it's that possibility, right, that brings us to this. I mean, we see that in our games. It's what we all share in this culture. It's like, yeah, we come for the possibility.
We've redefined what it means to be a sport, even. I don't see why we can't redefine what it means.
I know this sounds weird and people probably are surprised what I'm about to say. I don't think League is a sport. You know, I play games for a living, so maybe some people are like, oh, Huz would be really in for that, and League in the Olympics. No, I really don't. It's to me, it's not a sport. It's an e-sport, sure, but not a sport.
Be an online community.
What are your thoughts about what's next?
So we're so excited for 2023. There's so many learnings that we can pull from. Things like the feedback loop with our players. So players really seeing in that moment, what was the behavior that caused the disruption, and taking action on that immediately or as soon as possible, so players understand where we define what the behavioral expectations are in game. Having ways for our players to contribute to those expectations and really appreciating them for when they do so. Because as you said, it's a co-created community, it's a co-created space. We want our players to be able to contribute as much as possible to making it a community that we're all really proud to be a part of. My dream is to have League be a place where people aren't only coming for the pinnacle of competition, where they're also coming for the community, and a place where we are all wanting to contribute to this community, and we're proud to.
That does happen, but it's rare. Like, I would actually say, and yes, I'm going to be a bit biased, my community, right now in Twitch chat, you watching this video, the Huzzy Plebs, you know, that's what we call ourselves. We're one of, I would say, the most positive inner communities in League of Legends. There's pockets of very positive in League. They're just rare.
And we're also proud to invite our friends and our family and everyone we love to this great community.
See, that's quite a big thing. How many of you have had a friend or family member say, should I come and play League? And I guarantee 90% of you have given them the answer, don't do it. I've done that. My trainer recently downloaded League. He texted me with a picture of League downloading, and I was like, don't do it. And that's me. We've all said, like, don't play the game, which is crazy because we love the game, but we know the negatives behind it too. That's the problem.
You know, I can't think of a better theme, like, to start off a new year than possibility. And so I suppose with that in mind, I thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you listening.
We can't wait to continue this conversation with you all. Stay honorable out there.
So they didn't say a whole lot is what I would say. And just very quickly, hey, Morgan, Rosa, Champ, how you guys doing? Yeah, like, they didn't say a whole lot. The only thing that they are really kind of saying is that they want to not just punish toxicity and punish the kind of bad apples, they want to reward the good ones as well. And that's a good thing, because yeah, for the last few years, their approach was not, well, their approach wasn't really anything, but if anything, it was more just, you know, punish, punish, punish instead of reward. So I think reward is a good avenue. And then finally, before we kind of move on to the last topic, ANR actually bring up a point saying, you know, rioters might have a skewed sense of behavior, that if they're playing on an account that has riot at the beginning, you cannot have an account with riot and then something, because that is exclusively for rioters. All I will say, I do know, and this is kind of the perks to know rioters and know what's happening. About 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, there was actually a big thing, and they might not be as strict with it, but they did go through a phase that Riot was requesting the devs to not actively be having Riot in things. So some devs took away Riot from their Twitter stuff. Some devs, you know, took Riot away from their accounts. It still happens. I think the big eggs, if that makes sense, like the leads of each place, they still use Riot in kind of obvious places. But for the average rioter, I don't actually think they're having Riot and then their summoner name in League, or they're having Riot on Twitter. I do think, especially in game, they are having a well-rounded, blended approach because of what happened a couple years ago. So that is what I would say. All right, last one. Again, this video is going longer than I expected, so we'll be very quick with this one. This is a mid-scope updates. Which they said there's going to be a lot of them this year or something.
So what we're going to do is we're going to buff Blitzcrank, we're going to buff Soraka, we're going to buff AD Yuumi.
Okay. Well, now the cameras are rolling, so we should probably get to our talk.
Okay.
So we're here to talk about midscopes today. My name is Tim. I'm a designer on the Summoners Rift team. I've done a few midscopes in the past, like Syndra, Swain, and a long time ago, Rammus, and I'm here with my friends.
I'm Ezra. I'm also a designer on the Summoners Rift team. I do item balance systems, that kind of thing. Previously, I worked on Rengar as a midscope, and I'm currently working on Negan.
I'm August. I'm the lead champion designer, and midscopes I've worked on is most recently Jax, and then before that, Talia.
And the first question we have to answer, which I'm sure is on a lot of players' minds, is what is a midscope, and what sets it apart from balance work, DGUs, CGUs, ASUs,
Twitch chat is booing when Riot
ABCs,
August came on.
letters, all that stuff.
Probably the best way to say it, like in a big summary, is VGU, Visual Gameplay Update, is kind of like a new champion. A midscope is like refreshing a champion. So with the VGU, like say what we did with Pantheon or Aurelia, you got a very new champion out of that. You got new animations, new sounds, new VO, new kit, and that's an important part. Whereas a midscope is a lot more about refreshing a current character for its current players.
In its essence, it's taking the fantasy of a character. We're not making a new character, we're not making a new fantasy, and making it a 12 out of 10. Like, how far can we push this so that players feel like, oh, for Swain, I'm this huge demon bird that can be in the middle of their team. Or for Talia, that I'm actually an Earthweaver and I'm not punished by using my Q.
And then the second part about midscopes that's
Like how they
really
didn't say
important here
Earthbender.
is that because they're on lower scope in terms of work, they're on shorter timelines. Some only take like 1 or 2 months, and which means we can get them out a lot faster.
So how do we go about finding a good target for a midscope, right? Because there's a lot of different projects we do. What defines how we find a target for VGU versus random patchwork that me and Ezra do on a 2-week basis?
When a character feels like they maybe have lost their place in the game, or they feel a bit stale, they feel like they might not have as much of a purpose as they used to, a designer can look at a midscope and say, hey, is there some way to like really refresh who this character is in the game and what their place is in the entire league roster? In the past, we've done midscope-like projects. A lot of them have been really good. We've done Xin Zhao, Tom Kench, Sona, Rengar. We've done projects like this. But a lot of times when we do
The
like,
Rengar
this
one did
level
not
of
go
work,
well.
It's framed in terms of problems. Back
They
in the day when we
reverted
did
it.
the original work on Talia, that players said, Talia's a pro problem. We need to fix her for mid lane. And we succeeded in that, but it was like kind of at a cost to Talia players, as opposed to possibly a benefit. And so a lot of midscopes are framed in terms of not problems, but opportunities. It's about asking the question, hey, I see this character and I see somewhere that they could be even cooler, even better. And maybe we fixed some problems along the way, but it's about finding what's exciting about the character that we can really play up and enhance. So you worked on Nico, you worked on Syndra. How do we select mid-scopes? Like, is there a method to how we're choosing these projects?
The way I see it is, for the most part, it's strong passion for a character. Someone who's like deeply involved with the character,
It's
deeply
their
interested in the
subreddits.
character's success. They understand the
Subreddits
character.
confirmed.
You know, some of these characters have been live for years and years and years, so you've played them a lot. You truly understand the failings and the opportunity. I play Nico. I used to play her a lot, actually, and I was just like, at the end of the day, I was like, this character isn't... I want to have fun, and she's not letting me, right? I want to do all these things, and I want to trick people, I want to catch people, and then I just can't, right? And she's still fun, she's still fine, but she could be so much more.
That type of message is what we want to have for mid-scopes, which is, it's not about problems, it's not about meeting a schedule.
She just died.
Stuff like that. It's really about finding a fantasy and seeing if we can enhance that for the players, right?
Yeah.
That's what a mid-scope is.
And sometimes like a mid-scope can come from like, you know, just years of players telling us something. There's a lot of Swain players who, for a few years after his rework, were like, hey, I want to play this guy mid, and I feel like I can't play him mid. And he was powerful mid in terms of
Why are they
win
just
rate.
showing every
That
clip
didn't
of
mean
the
he felt
champion they're
powerful or
talking
that
about
he was
dying?
super fun there. And we
Gotta
we
get milk,
constantly have
6
Swain
months of
players
Prime.
telling
Thank you so
us,
much,
like,
dude.
hey, yeah,
I
can play
cannot
this guy
wait for the
support.
new
He's a
season.
cool support, but what about mid lane? I want that mid Swain back. And that was actually, I think, one of the inspirations for the work that ended up being done to Swain.
I think it's important to note that it's not other players who might like Swain. It's Swain players who feel like their character isn't working for them. The goal of mid-scopes isn't make a character more popular. Like, everyone will play this character. It's the players who love this character actually feel like the character is working for them.
So yeah, they do
I
it
think
for
there's
the
probably a
players.
question of like, you've done Silas, you've done Tom Kench, you've done Sona, Sinjao. Why are you calling these things mid-scopes now? Like, what's the point of that? By saying, hey, we're doing this project, they're called mid-scopes. This is the amount of resources they need. We can plan for them ahead of time so that when a designer, like say Tim, is like, hey, I want to do a Syndra change, but it's going to need a new queue. Instead of us saying to Tim, hey, you can't do that, we don't have any resources to make a new queue, we can say, okay, we can plan for that. We can slot that in, and then we'll get it out to players in 2 months.
Now that we've covered about what
Very
mid-scopes
quickly, it
are
is
and how
worth
we pick
saying,
them out,
you know, they talk about resources. I know so many people who don't know the game industry potentially will be like, what are they talking about resources? You know, what, you know, they're just making things. So when it comes to resources, it's kind of a few factors that they're talking about. One is a resource of time. That's kind of one of the big ones, is depending how much time they actually have at that current stage in time, can they, you know, if they're doing like 2 or 3 brand new champions, can they give time for other developers to go off and do these kind of more mini updates? Can they actually give that time to them to do it? So time's one, money's another. So money kind of goes off how many developers they've got. And obviously a fix to that is hire more developers. But obviously hiring more developers isn't just a quick fix. Hiring more developers means you might need more office space. You might need more actual work computers, which obviously when you're building games are quite powerful. So that's an extra expense layered on top and a top and a top. So that's the money aspect. So, and also finding the right people to do it as well. It's not always easy to hire the right people. If there's not an abundance of people in the local area, you've got to then hire out and then try to bring talent in. So that's the resources that they're talking about. It is worth mentioning, Riot has actually said, which I'm going to be honest, has surprised me in some way, considering how the season has started with their absolutely horrible communication. They actually have said this is the biggest investment year in League of Legends, potentially either ever or a long time. So their budget for League of Legends this year is very high, and that will be reflected on them most likely hiring a lot of staff. So they're actually trying to staff League more as they needed to. You know, as someone that knows a little bit in the inside, the amount of developers that have left League, and they haven't necessarily left Riot, some of them obviously have, but a lot of them have left for 2 major areas. One, Valorant. A lot of them have gone over to Valorant. Valorant does seem to be the new star child of Riot. But the other place that a lot of them has gone to the MMO. So obviously Riot is building an MMO. It's still probably not out for like another 5 years, but an MMO is an absolutely insane but very exciting game for a lot of developers and players. So a lot of them have actually gone either to Valorant or the MMO. So Riot have actually started to need to rehire a lot of people again. They were working, I'd say, last year on a more bare bones team. And very quickly, Black Magic, thanks so much, dude, for the 3 months of Prime. Says, dude, been using my Prime, but never got to see you live till now. Oh, welcome, dude. Thank you so much. All right, here we go.
And what we want to do, what can players expect in 2023 for Midscopes?
This isn't set in stone right now, but it's something we'd like to work up to. Is long term, if we could be shipping a midscope, say once every 2 months, then we could do things like put out a midscope roadmap for players, say, hey, here's the midscopes we're thinking about this year, and set better expectations for like maybe your character could get one. I think one thing that can be rough as a League of Legends player is if you think your character needs an update, it might be years before they actually get it. But with midscopes, they succeed similar to a VGU in like revitalizing the champion without necessarily taking all that extra time, which means we can do more of them.
So talking about expectations,
Two's good. One per 2
you want
months.
to give us a sneak peek on what Nico's midscope is going to be about?
Leak Nico, where is she?
Well, I can give, so there's a lot of things going on in Nico, but I can give the one sneak peek, which is her passive, instead of just turning to other champions, is now other things, anything. She can turn into a plant, she can turn into a demon mushroom.
That is pretty cool.
A minion, a monster, and a champion.
Can she turn into a better teammate?
No, she'll actually probably be a worse teammate.
Oh,
That's okay.
So to me, I will say that that is a good thing for Nico, I would say. The whole thing of, you know, she's a chameleon that transforms, it isn't really used. You know, there's been that recent, I'm sure you've seen it, Korean strategy that you start level 1 and your Teemo top lane, you have a Nico with you and you kind of fake out, you know, you have your Teemo stealthed behind the enemy champion very quickly, pretend your Teemo as Nico, and bam, level 1, you'll get a sneaky kill. That's the most like Nico strategy we've ever seen. So the fact that she can actually, you know, become objects is pretty fun. And yeah, Max actually just said in chat, which is actually kind of cool, there will now be a way, if people know the game Prop Hunt, obviously Gmod is quite known for Prop Hunt, you can now play League of Legends Prop Hunt with probably Nico, which is kind of fun. So yeah, in custom games, there may be a rise in that as well.
Mechanic in League. All right, so you have Nico that turns into wards, literally, coming to a rift near you. Hopefully soon, TM. But that's all we have for today. Thanks for hanging out with us. And
so they didn't really say a lot, it is worth mentioning, and that has been a little bit of a theme with these videos. But I like the idea of 2 VGU kind of things, one update per every 2 months. That would put them around 6 of them a year. I don't know, because Riot's not mentioned it. Some of you may remember that Riot did want 6 new champions a year. They wanted 1 for each role, but 2 for mid lane, 1 being more of a mage, 1 being an assassin. They haven't really, I don't think, ever actually done that since they announced they were doing it a few years ago. I don't actually think they've ever hit that target. But if Riot, let's say, release 4 to 5 new champions a year and then 4 to 6 updates a year, I think that's a healthy number. I don't think that's too bad. I personally do think that the updates should outnumber the new champions, because there's a lot of old champions that need a bit of love. And, you know, I've always had that thing, old champions versus new champions. New champions are just so much more powerful in so many ways. They can simply do more. So I think giving a bit of love for older champions and kind of trying to bring them up a little bit to modern standards, I think is overall a healthy thing. Because let's be honest, the way, well, at least with Riot August in charge, they're never going to dumb down new champions. They're always going to be ridiculous, have 3-paragraph long abilities, because that's what he tends to go with. So yeah, interesting though. But there we go. That is the 3 dev chat videos done. There's a couple nice things that have been said, but overall I wish they said a bit more. They kind of just, you know, not really mentioned that much even though they've spoken for a while. But there are some nice things, so hopefully the balance team will actually look less just as a data machine and actually feel, you know, look at the feel of the game. Player behavior, they're trying to reward positivity, not just punish negativity. And then obviously from the mid-scope updates, we're potentially getting one every 2 months. So hopefully that will be a good thing for the game. So if you guys enjoyed this, please do throw a like on it. If you're excited for the upcoming season, yeah, hopefully it'll be great. Just again, just to mention, by the time this video comes out, the season will not be live yet. Again, the communication has been awful. Tomorrow, so Wednesday, for EU West, the season starts Wednesday, the 11th of January, around 5 a.m. If you're in America and watching this video, as it comes out, the season actually will start for you in about 3 hours, roughly. Your season is actually beginning in the night, I think, of January 10th. I think. But it's still a mess. The communication has been so bad. But anyway, that's going to be it. If you guys enjoyed, do throw a like on it, throw a comment, throw a subscribe. Let me know what you think of all this down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Call down!